everybody, welcome back to the channel. It has been a hot minute since I've been on. I have been away for a couple of weeks, been busy getting the Down the Rabbit Hole magazine together and some other jobs that I had on as well. If you're following me over in Facebook, you would know that that's all happening, and yeah, we've been busy in the group as well. We've got things happening with the challenges and all that sort of stuff. So I've been super busy and something had to give. So I thought I'd take a break from recording because it's always nice to take a break. But I'm back, and today we are here for my Booktube Stitch with me. So basically what happens is I do a little bit of stitching and a little bit of talking about the books that I've read in the last couple of weeks. I am currently doing a challenge over in DDs quilting and crafting group. I probably should change it to hobbies, but I'm going to leave it at crafting. But we have a reading challenge happening over there. So we've actually got two. We've got a yearly one, which is a to Z, so all the titles need to match a letter of the alphabet. And we also have our bingo challenge, so we have different genres of books and different prompts, and every week we roll the dice, and that's the book that we read for that week. So the Stitch with me that we've got happening today is Long Dog Samplers by Pandemic by Long Dog Samplers. Sorry, reading it the wrong way. I'm working up in this area. I've just started going up on this bit here. So I've turned the corner and I'm heading up here. So I'm going to keep working on that. That's page 2. The thread that I am using today is a Silks for You. It is PRO. Let me just see. I always forget. It is PRO 68 is this one. Okay, and you can see there that it's a variegated, and that's what it looks like. It's got charcoals and burgundies in it. So it's a very nice thread. Lovely to work with. I do have my needles all set up to go. So I don't think I did a wrap up the last time I did a Stitch with me. So for those that are following at home, I have updated my reading journal, and we'll get into that. Now I just might bring this out just a touch for you. Okay, so let me just see. Let me just go. So my favorite book for January was A Name of the Wind. That was a really good book, and so much so that I actually went out and bought the second book for it as soon as I finished it. So that was my favorite book. My A to Z has been starting to fill up, and I'm doing another challenge over in Magical Stitches as well. And as you can see, I am up to book 19 already, and these colors here are just ones that that's just my colors that I've got. So I've got a little key down the bottom here, so you can see down here, and that tells me what it is. And I've added a new one in self-help as well. So, you know, things like parenting books or dieting books, or, you know, things on lifestyles and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's what that is. So there's the favorite one. That's my monthly favorite reads. It had 662 pages in it, and I've since read Voyager, but that's into February. So I read that in the first week of February. It took me all week, so not a lot of other reading happened. So that's one of the books that we're going to talk about. This is my layout to find out which was my favorite book for the year. And then I also give that away on the channel. So basically right at the end of the year, once I've worked out what my favorite book is, I will actually have that as a giveaway, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a new release either. Alright, so January, you can see there, this is my layout that I decided to go with. So this is January reads. I met all of the to be reads. I read 16 books all up, and over 5,461 pages in total, and these are all the book covers. So you can see there, that's what I've just done. I've made them little ones, and if you want to do this, these are 3/4 of an inch by 1 inch. I've made the little covers, so that I thought that was, I was gonna like have them all in lines, but I decided to have them just going everywhere. So 16 books was not is a pretty good go at it. So I read a book, the Day That Changed Everything by Catherine Miller, and it had in between, like as the book was going on, it had little snippets about love, and this was it's not necessarily a quote, but it was I really loved it, and it's something that I'd probably pass on to my daughters if like just as little pearls of wisdom. You must not let any love, new or old, dull your sparkle. In the same way, you should not let any friend do the same. Most of all, you should not let an old love stop you from finding new love. So if you've lost someone, you shouldn't, think that that's the end of time. That sort of rang true with me. It will be so easy to believe that one cannot spring from another, but it does. It does over and over again because it has to, because love is equal to hope, and what a world we would be without that. Find hope, search for it, and once you have it, never let it go. That really just sung to me, and so I really felt to have that in there. This is just, and if you've seen my flip through, you would have already seen the artwork. I just like find little bits and pieces to stick in here of artwork. And so then we move on to February. So it's sort of a little bit pastel-y throughout this. I found this over on Pinterest, and then I've just done some inking to bring like the pink hues in. And I just had this little sticker, it's a little washi tape sticker that I put in there. I've drawn the calendar again, and basically what you can see here, that where I've read books, I've marked them down. So there's not too many so far. And then I've got my to be read. So because it's, February and it's the month of, love, Valentine's Day and all the rest of it, I thought that I'd go with a pinkish purple theme, and then this is going to be where my favorite quote goes in. And then I found this one over on Pinterest as well. Once upon a time, there was a girl who really loved books and cats. Oh, and it was me. So yeah, so that's sort of what I've done. And this pink paper that I've got, these are just some die cuts that I had, and this pink paper was an envelope. If you followed my Vlogmas, you would have seen that I had a junk journal mystery box, and it had a pink envelope in there, and I just thought it worked really perfect, so I put some down the bottom. As I said, the layouts are going to be pretty much the same. I really liked how the January one looked, and obviously I had this as my favorite book, but then I've just added the word quote, and I've got some new pens for writing as well, so you can see here down the bottom I've just handwritten that in. But anything that's quite lengthy, my writing tends to get messy as I go, so I just thought I'd put it on that and just stick it in. But yeah, so that is the reading journal, all up to date. Obviously I've got to put more things in. Once I get to the end of the month, I put all the book covers in, and I just use stickers and stuff that I've got, die cuts, and all the rest. So I've got to get some more flower ones. This was as a washi tape sticker that I had in my stash, and again this was just found over on Pinterest. The artists weren't known, they were just like, there may be a signature in there, but I couldn't find who the artist was to give them credit or anything like that. But I just, little bits of artwork that people do that I like, and and all the rest of it. But that is my reading journal, all up to date. 16 books for January is pretty amazing. All right, so let's get into the stitching. A lot of you are probably wondering what I've been up to. I've lost my needle under here. I have my cuppa, and I have my I have the pattern keeper open off to the side, and I am stitching 2 over 1 full cross on this one. I don't think you could do it as a 10 stitcher. You probably could, but still it'd look a bit average. I don't think I'd like it. So I've got pattern keeper open, and yeah, it's a little bit tricky with this big, I don't normally have this frame on here, but it's a little bit tricky because the head of the frame is right here, and my hand bumps it underneath, so it'll probably go a little bit slower. So a little bit of a life update. Not much has been happening in the way of life. Just busy with the magazine and making sure that's all done and all the rest of it. I'm just going to mark off to make sure that I don't lose my spot. And of course it's not going to blow to it. pattern keeper, I love it sometimes, but sometimes you can't quite get to turn it up, make it a bit larger. Sometimes you end up hitting the wrong thing. Drives me mental. Because you want to see where you're going and the pattern, but sometimes it just plays funny buggers. Alright, that should work now. Alright. Okay, now that's where I'm going. So yeah, the head of my frame hits it a little bit. I would have liked to have been on my big frame, but I don't have a tripod big enough to do overhead, and it just wasn't looking right. So yeah. So I have been super busy getting Down the Rabbit Hole magazine out. It's not released yet. It's off at the proofreaders. I'm just waiting to hear back from her of any edits that I've got to do. It is due to come out on the 15th of February, but if I've got lots of edits to do, which I shouldn't, because I've run it through all the programs and whatnot to find mistakes, and I've gone over it myself several times. There shouldn't be too many. There'll be just little ones that I've missed, I'd say. It should be ready to go. Yeah, for the 15th. What time on the 15th, I don't know, because that will wholly and solely depend on how much editing I get done. Alright, and we're going here. Alright. Yes, before I come on camera, I can tell you I counted this about 5 times to make sure that it was right. Generally I don't like jumping too far, but as you can see, there's my bar. Well, you probably can't see, there's a bar right there, and I couldn't get up to this part because the head of the frame's there. So this is probably a little bit too big. If I was working this area down here, it wouldn't be a problem. But because I'm working this area up here, it was going to be an issue. So that's why I've had to jump over here. So let me just count that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. Now that I've got that first baseline, I should be right. I haven't got a lot of stitching in either, because I was working, on the mag and getting things finalized, designs, even my own designs. Like I've done stitching for that sort of stuff. Hopefully you'll enjoy stitching some of the things that I've got. I've got 2 designs in this time, one large, one small. One you could do in a weekend, not a problem. And I've got a lot more stuff in the pipeline at the moment. Just getting the final bits and pieces on those designs, and they'll head off to model stitches, and I'll stitch some myself. And yeah, got quite a few things coming up that I think you will all enjoy. Reading of books, as I said, I haven't read too many books. I finished, I think the last time we spoke I had can't remember. I think I was halfway through Name of the Wind. No, I think I've actually already talked about that. I finished that. I can't remember the last time I did a Stitch With Me. It feels like forever. And yeah, so I've got a few books that I've got to review. I'll have to look at my notes and all the rest of it to make sure that I've got everything sorted and whatnot. But yeah, I've read a couple, not too many. This week it looks like I'm going to be reading a lot more because the books are a lot shorter, and when you're working on the magazine, I can't really listen to a book because I'm reading stuff on the... I can multitask with the best of them, but I'm not that good at a multitasker, reading and taking in, or listening to a book and taking in everything that's been said in the book, and as well as reading stuff on the screen. Yeah, I'm not that good. I can have many books on the go and I can flip from one to the other, but I definitely can't read 2 books at exactly the same time, or a magazine and a book at the same time. Just not possible. So yeah, so a lot of that, because you've got to concentrate too, that you're reading and looking for errors, and you've got to make sure that you've covered everything in the format and all that sort of stuff. It can get a little bit tricky. So yeah, not a lot of reading gets done when I'm working on the mag. So, but in saying that, I've still got a few, and I'm going to, other than that, nothing has really happened. I've just mainly stayed at home. I've been doing a lot of driving lessons. I've been working on a quilt, and doing just basically doing a lot of sewing and whatnot for the Facebook group where I sell my project bags and everything. Oh, I've got a Fitbit in the last couple of weeks. So my hubby brought me a Fitbit, not this weekend, just gone, the weekend before. We went out for the day by ourselves, without the kids, and spent the day together. And I said to him I was struggling to keep motivated and all the rest of it. He goes, I know how to motivate you. I'll get you a Fitbit. And that, because last time my old Fitbit broke and I just never replaced it because I wasn't exercising or anything like that, and I didn't want to waste the money. Not that it's a waste of money, but at that time we had Mia living here and I didn't want to spend money that I didn't need to spend. I should probably phrase it that way, because it's not a waste of money. And yeah, so basically we went and got this one, and this is, I think it's the Luxe one. And it comes with the pink band, and you can change the watches and like the watch clock faces and all that sort of stuff on it. And it came with, I think 3 months of premium Fitbit access to their premium service. And I put it on, as I said, it wasn't Sunday just gone, it was the Sunday before. And I put it on, and last week I walked a total of 32 kilometers. So not too shabby. I walked every day bar one, I think, last week. And excuse me, it actually really motivates me. I am a numbers and stats sort of girl. I do like to see those, and I don't necessarily, because you get with the premium or even with Fitbit, you can add friends and stuff like that, and you can compete against one another. I don't generally do that sort of thing. My cousin-in-law added me as a friend, but that's it. That's all I've added. I don't generally go compete against other people and whatnot, but there's challenges and stuff in there. Anybody that's got a Fitbit knows that. And yeah, so you can do those challenges and whatnot. So I thought, oh yeah, no, I can do those. But basically, pretty much from the moment it went on, I can see that I needed to get more sleep as well. Like, it's monitoring my sleep. I felt like I wasn't getting enough sleep, so I've gone back to just getting into bed by 9 o'clock. Not necessarily going to sleep at 9 o'clock, but just getting back into bed at 9 o'clock and winding down and reading. Not necessarily for 4 or 5 hours. I just set an alarm and I read for a half an hour, and whatever I can get read in that half an hour, that's what I read. I'm actually reading a really good book now. What's it called? Oh, I've forgotten the name of it. It is called Yesterday Was the Easy Day, I think it's called, and it's about a guy that was in the SAS here in Australia, Australian author, obviously, and yeah, and it's just it starts out with him in an Indian jail, so and he's just sort of talking about how he came into the SAS and all that sort of stuff, and so I just read a couple of pages of that in the morning, and I've been reading a couple of pages of that at night, and I think I'm up to chapter 6 or 7 now, and yeah, and I just set the timer for half an hour and read as much as I can in that half an hour. When I come back from my walk in the morning, when I'm having my morning coffee, I'll read a little bit more, but yeah, I have the book sitting there. I come home, after my walk, I have a glass of water, make my coffee, sit down, read a couple of pages. The girls go off to school because they're all back at school, so yay, that's also happened. Yeah, so they go off to school, say I love you, have a good day, all that sort of stuff, and off they top. And then Brendan usually comes in after they leave school, because after he's been out doing whatever he's doing, he'll come into the kitchen and getting ready for work and all that, and say his goodbyes. And then once they all leave, I close my book, I've usually finished my coffee by then. I toddle off, I have my shower, and then I start work. So I come out and I do filming and all that sort of stuff. But as I said, I haven't done that while I've been working on the magazine. It makes it a little bit tricky. Yeah, so it makes a big difference dropping something to your time. Like, I like to keep busy and stuff like that, and you know, fit all the things in and whatnot. So yeah, but as I said, I've got a couple of books to review, not too many. So I've got 4 books to review this week. So as I said, I haven't read a great deal because I've been super busy. But anyway, let's get into it. As you know, I'm doing the bingo challenge over in DD's Quilting and Crafting group. So every week we get a new prompt, and one of the prompts, and I finished this on the last day of January. So that's how long it's been since I've seen you last. So yeah. All right. So it was, the prompt for that one, I didn't write down what it was. True crime. It was for true crime. So I decided to read a book that was on Savannah's bookshelf, and it was called Australian Heist, and it is by James Phillips, I think is how you pronounce his last name. And a little bit about the author. He is an award-winning journalist. He's a senior reporter for the Sunday Telegraph and the Daily Telegraph down in Sydney. So that's in New South Wales for those that aren't in Australia. And so yeah, he's got a few books out, and this book has actually prompted me to look a little bit further into his other books, and I'll cover that a bit later. So this one was a true crime book. It was published in 2018, and it has 400 pages, so it's not a short book by any means. And of course, it is covering the bushrangers. A particular group of bushrangers in New South Wales, and these bushrangers basically pulled off the biggest robbery in Australian history, and to date it is still the largest robbery in Australia. So it happened in I think you pronounce it Ugroa Rocks, and that is in central west New South Wales, about 40 k's east of, a little bit southeast of Forbes in central New South Wales. So if memory serves me correctly, or is it near Orange? It's around that area anyway. So it is in central west New South Wales, and it happened in 1862. And so it basically tells the story of how Ben Hall, Frank Gardner, John O'Mealy, John Gilbert, Harry Mance, Alex Fordyce, John Bow, and Dan Charters, I think his name was. Can't read my own writing. How they planned and executed the largest robbery. Now, the reason it was the largest robbery, it was 77 kilos of gold. In today's standard, that's about $10 million, 10 million plus. And as I said, it still remains one of Australia's largest robbery. Gold robbery. So that's no easy feat. So and it tells the story of how they done it, how they went about it, what the plan was, how they all came together, what happened after the robbery, where the gold ended up, who got caught, who didn't get caught, who got let off. It also covers the inadequate police, or one particular police. Was he in charge? I'm trying to think if he was in charge or not. But anyway, I didn't write that down. But yeah, it just covers just about everything, and just the brazenness of them, and like it was really, really, really well done. Like I really enjoyed it. Like, as you know, last year I read a book about a bushranger, Captain Moonlight. And so basically I wanted to, and I think I said that in that video, that I wanted to read more about our bushrangers and all that sort of stuff, because I was not interested in history when I was at school. So, and as most teenagers aren't, interested in anything like that anyway. So it's really good that I'm delving into this, and it's great because I just go and check out Savannah. Savannah's into true crime and serial killers and all that sort of stuff. So anything like that, I can just go and check out her bookshelf, and that's where I found it. Now, I actually done audio and physical book on this, because she's a bit funny about you borrowing her book, so I used her book to sort of finish the day off, but I listened to it a couple of days a week, about a week I think I was listening to that, because I don't like to just sit there and listen to it all in one go, because I like to listen to a part of it, and then especially when it's history, I sort of like to listen to a part of it, and then whatever I heard in that chapter or a couple of chapters or whatever, I'll go and look a little bit further. I didn't do much of that with this one, because this book pretty much covered everything that I needed to know. Like, it gave you dates and all the rest of it. As I said, this happened in 1862, and and it basically, that's all I can really say about it. Like, it covered everything, but it's actually given me another author to look at. And as I said, James Phillips is a journalist for the Telegraph paper down in Sydney, New South Wales, and he's got quite a number of books out. He's got an autobiography on what's his name again? Dick Johnson. Anybody here in Australia knows who Dick Johnson is. He was a car racer, very prominent in the Bathurst early years and all the rest of it. Between Dick Johnson and Peter Brock, there was that rivalry, Ford and Holden and all that sort of stuff. So he's written an autobiography on that. So I'm going to chase that up and have a bit of a read of that. I think probably just get that on audiobook if it's available, because my husband would be interested in that as well. But he's got a couple of other ones that I went looking for his books, and I went on Goodreads and they gave me a bit of a list. So Australia's hardest prison, inside Long Bay Jail, and Australia's most murderous prison is another one. So I'm looking forward to getting hold of those, and I'll probably just get them on audio and give them a bit of a read and see how we go, and I'll review them in later episodes. So that was the end of January. That finished off, rounded out my January. And as you've seen at the beginning of the video, I've got all the book covers in and everything. And it's all looking very pretty and everything in my reading journal. So now we've flicked over into February. The genre of books that I'm reading are going to be sort of romancy. There's a love story in there. Not necessarily full-on romance, but there's a little bit of a love story, but I'm also going to be still reading my Jessie Hunt, so there's a little bit, just to break up the romance a little bit, but there's a little bit of a love story happening in that one. So we're going to talk about that. This one is book 15, and it had 216 pages, like always with Blake Pearce's books. They're around the 200. They're like your little novellas, the little bite-sized books that you can just listen to or read in a day, and you're done, and you can put it down and you can move on with your life, sort of thing. So this book series that I came across, he brings out one, from what I've looked at, about every 2 months one of these books come out. So I listened to this one on audio. I got this one through Scribe, and basically it's just following on with the story. It was published in 2020 in July, and it's book 15 in the series, and it's called The Perfect Mistress. So basically there's a little bit of an undertone in this series that Jessie seems to come across. Like, the first book started out with that her and her husband moved to this town, and they joined this club, and it was like a swingers club. This sort of appears again in this, not that particular club, but there's another swingers, and there's been a little bit of this touching on throughout the series. Like, I haven't really said where the people were from, but there's always seems to be this little bit of swingers stuff happening in the background. So again, she is, this book was actually really fast paced. I really enjoyed this book, and it moves so quickly. But it didn't miss anything, and you could pretty much pick up the series from, like, if you didn't want to read the past 14 books, which I really recommend that you do, but if you didn't want to and you just wanted to start this series, because I can't see the series ending anytime soon anywhere on the internet. I mean, it's still, there's releases and everything happening this year. So basically if you wanted to pick up the series from now, you could, because in the beginning of this book, it really does cover everything that's gone on in the last couple of books, or the last 15 books, like from her husband to the all of the things about her father and the serial killers and all the stuff. It just touches on it lightly, but it gives you enough of a background that you would be able to definitely just pick it up and start reading and know what this character is about, and know what Hannah's about, and know what Ryan's about. So they're the three main characters in it at the moment. Jessie is the main character. She is a criminal profiler. At this stage of the books, she is actually teaching, but in the last book, her partner and sister were almost caught by the night hunter. Now, this is the serial killer that's come into it. He's an elderly gentleman at this stage, but he's come back into it because Garland Moses was killed by Jessie's and I'm going to give spoilers here because it's really hard not to, at book 15, it's really hard to talk about this book without giving spoilers. So if you don't want to hear it, just, I don't know, mute it. I don't know what to do. But anyway, Garland Moses was a criminal profiler as well. He was an amazing criminal profiler, and he took Jessie under his wings, and he left her his house after he was killed by Jessie's ex-husband. And that actually triggered for the night hunter to come back into it, because Garland Moses was the night hunter's nemesis. Basically, he came the closest to catching him, almost killed him many, many years ago. And so he's been sort of laying real low and not doing anything that anybody's aware of, and all the rest of it. And he's come back into it, and he's got Jessie and her family in his crosshairs, because he wants to see if she's as good as Garland. And so basically, in the last book, he had come very close to killing Ryan and Hannah, but they got away. Jessie managed to save them. He almost gassed them. And basically, so they've all gone into hiding again. So throughout this series, there's a lot of Jessie being, with the FBI marshals and being hidden and in a safe house and all that sort of stuff. So they're hiding again, but the whole department is trying to find the night hunter. He's already killed one police officer. He's killed several people trying to get Jessie's attention. He's got her attention now, and basically they are being whisked away to the mountains in hiding. No one's telling anybody where they are going or anything like that. There happens to be a murder which we find out about in the first 20 sentences, and basically it is she's up in the mountains, and they can sort of breathe up there because they're in hiding. No one knows who they are. They're under assumed names and all that sort of stuff. So it's a really good scenario for them. So she's up there investigating murders while the rest of the department are trying to find the night hunter. Unfortunately, not everything goes to plan, and they're not getting close enough to him or anything like that, but Jessie's solving the murders. She gets hold of she solves the murder up in the mountains and all the rest of it. And I'm going to leave it there because something happens at the end of the book. Two significant things happen at the end of the book, and I don't want to give them away, especially if you're going to pick this series up at book 15. The book that I'm referring to, if I haven't already said, I think I did, which it's called The Perfect Mistress, is book 15. And it is a good book to get into. I gave it 4 stars, and I really enjoyed it. I love the fast paces of it. Again, we've got sub-stories happening with Hannah and with Ryan, although Ryan and Jessie are finally back together and working on a case together, because they're in hiding together. So it's a really good book. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to getting into book 16, but I'm going to leave it there. If you want to pick up this series, I would pick it up now. As I said at the beginning of the book, it has enough of background, and each book sort of does, but this one actually has a lot more background. He didn't spend too much time on it while writing it, but there is so much information that he gives you in the first couple of chapters. You could definitely just pick this up and start reading it. And I I think you will thoroughly enjoy it, especially if you're into that psychological murder bit of serial killer in the background and all the rest of it. I think I've convinced Savannah to pick it up as well, because I said to her, it's not so heavy as a true crime serial killer. It's just, yeah. I said you'll probably laugh at it because there's probably so many. I'm not into the true crime serial killer stuff, but she's right into it. So, I said to her, you might end up enjoying it because it's just, they're quick, bite-sized books, and it gives your brain a little bit of a rest of not learning so much. So, yeah. All right, the next one. So that's the series that I'm going to read throughout February. That's not going to have romance in it, but as I said, it does have a little bit of romance in it, especially this book that I've just read. Anyway, moving on to the next one. We're moving on to the Outlander series. So I have read the first two books, and this was book 3. So I read 2 books last year. I think that was in the later half of the year, and then I was going to read them every weekend, but they're quite lengthy books, and life got in the way and it didn't happen. So basically I picked it up. It was the first book that I picked up, and I've been using this as my walking book. And then I got really into the story and had to listen to it more often than not. So basically book 3 follows on from book 2. In book 2, you've got the series and all the rest of it. So on Netflix, I decided that I'm not watching the series until I'm finished reading the series. So I've got to get a move on, basically. So it basically follows on from book 2. It's 20 years later. And Claire is in 1968, and basically she is with her daughter. And there are spoilers in this, people, because I cannot talk about this without. I've tried to work out how to talk about it without spoilers, but I can't do it. On that, so although this is on the synopsis of on Goodreads anyway, so that she's with her daughter. So that she's gone back to have the baby, Jamie's baby, and all the rest of it. Turns out to be a daughter. She's gone back to Jack, and basically she's in 1968. She is under the assumption that Jamie has died at Culloden in the Battle of Culloden, and so she's essentially mourning the loss of Jamie and longing for him and all the rest of it. She doesn't feel that connection with Jack anymore. So she doesn't feel that connection. I was saying Jack, I meant Frank. I was thinking Jack Randall instead of Frank in 1968. So it gets, as you can see, you can get a little bit confusing over the characters and all the rest of it. But anyway, she's back in 1968. She's longing for Jamie. She believes that he's died, and she's back with Frank. And things aren't going that great with Frank and all the rest of it. So most of this book swings between what was happening back with Jamie and what was happening in 1968. And basically she's now searching. So it hasn't worked out with Frank. He's since passed on, and now she's gone back to where they were staying in the first book, which I, for the life of me, cannot remember the name of the town. But anyway, she's gone back to the Reverend's house, and the Reverend has since passed on, and so he's there with the son that he had, the adoptive son, and she's taken Brianna, her daughter, there, and they're searching for what happened to him and all the rest of it. Subsequently, she discovers that he didn't die at Culloden and all the rest of it. So, the book is swinging backwards and forwards and all that sort of stuff. And, so she's now torn whether she is going to stay with her daughter or go back. And she's not sure that she can go back and all this sort of stuff. So, but as I said, the book swings between both of them. So, it's in 1968 and what they find, and then it swings back to Jamie and what's happening with Jamie after Culloden, and it goes into how he survived and where he ended up, and obviously he's in jail because he's classed as, a criminal because he was fighting against the king and all the rest of it. the he ends up in jail and whatnot, and he ends up with some good fortune for him, luckily for him. And it was back in the first book, I believe, where he met this character, and this character comes back into it like twice, not once but twice. He ends up with some really good fortune. He ends up in as far as prison go, he ends up in a decent place, and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, it was really, really good. I loved how they filled in the 20-year gap on what was happening back when Jamie was still in, like after the Culloden and all the rest of it, and then how she ended up having a baby and covered all that, and then her subsequently finding out that he survived, and then and so she ends up going back because she was torn and all the rest of it, but she ended up going back. Her daughter totally understood. Her daughter, I don't know how they portrayed it in the TV show, because I haven't watched season. I've watched the first 2 seasons, but I haven't watched the 3rd season. So her daughter totally understands, tells her to go back. You know, she can see that her mother is hurting and all that sort of stuff, and wants her to go back. So Claire writes her a letter and all the rest of it. But anyway, she ends up going back, and then there's all these other storylines that are happening after she goes back. She finds him, and all the rest of it, and a few other characters from the first couple of books have come back into it that helped her out and stuff like that. And and then there's the storyline of, like, they're going, I'm just referring to my notes. Basically, once she's back there and all the rest of it, the story sort of picks up with them living together in that time and all the rest of it. And so basically, one thing leads to another. They have to go and get these jewels and all the rest of it. So they take the young nephew, and he ends up getting kidnapped by these sailors while getting these jewels that are out in this rock. And basically, and then she sort of just leaves it there. Like, you don't know whether the sailors, like, you assume that the sailors have the treasure that was out in these rocks that the kid was going to get. You assume that you naturally assume that they have them, but you don't understand why they have them until later on in the book. And I'm like, oh my God, I did not see that coming. But anyway, subsequently they go chasing these sailors or pirates, or whatever you want to call them. And so they're now hunting to get the nephew back. And so they've got to try and save him before it's too late. And so then there's a whole heap of other stuff that happens while they're out on the ocean. And if you remember correctly, was it the first or the second book? Whenever they went to France, basically Jamie doesn't do well on water. He's definitely a land person, and he doesn't do really well. And so subsequently he gets really sick and all the rest of it, and then they end up fixing the problem and using some alternative medicines and stuff like that. And so it just goes through all the drama of all of that sort of stuff while, you know, they're pining for one another, and they lose one another, then they find one another, then they lose one another, then they find one another, you know, and it's just going on. Like, I can't believe that, like, I was getting so into this book that when it finished, I didn't even realise that the book was going to finish. That's how into it I was. I just had my phone, I had my headphones on, I was sewing away and all the rest of it, and I had no idea that I was getting that close to the end. And when it ended, I'm like, no! Because then I'm like, oh no, I've got to pick up the other book. And I'm like, I know that I don't have time, because it took me quite a while to read this book and listen to this book, because I actually have both audio and physical. It took me a little while to get through this book, because I've been working on the magazine, so I couldn't listen to the magazine listen to the book while I was working on the magazine, because I can't read a magazine and read a book at the same time. I mean, it's impossible, because you lose your place, you make mistakes and all the rest of it. And it's a magazine I'm putting out, people are buying it. They need to be able to read it, not have something about Jamie in it, because, you know, or I've made formatting mistakes or whatever, and it just takes twice as long. So as I said, I'm not going to watch the Netflix series until I'm finished because I don't even know what they're up to. What are they up to on Netflix? I think they're up to season 5, aren't they? So I've got to get a crack on. I mean, and there's 9 books, is there? 8, 9 books in the series. I think a new one, her latest one's just come out. So I don't know if that's the last one or not. I think I'll have to check that out. So yeah, I really loved it. I really love the story. I'm looking forward to the continuing story. I'm using, as I said, I use this one for my morning walks and all the rest of it. And then I was listening to it more often than not in the studio, and I was so disappointed when it ended because I was just that into it. And I'm hoping to start the next one next week. I've got a few books that I've got to get through for Bingo Prompts and School of Magical Stitches, so I want to get those books there. They've already been pulled off the shelf and they're sitting on my bedside table, so I want to really get stuck into them. So I'm just going to leave it there. The only thing that I would say is that it is a romance with a bit of action. Like, it's an action romance because we've got all that other stuff going on. You know, they're either fighting for their lives or they're hunting for someone on the high seas. There's enough. There's a little bit of, mysterious stuff happening, what happened to him and all the rest of it. Because essentially the kid just disappears. But they're and why is he being taken and all that sort of stuff. They could have very well just taken the jewels and left him behind, but they've actually taken him for some reason. So, and you find all that out towards the end of the book. So, that's probably why I got right into it, because it was filling in all the little bit of holes and stuff like that. Now, when was this book published? I did not write this down, so I'm just going to have a look. It was first published in 2001. So she's been writing this series for quite some time, considering she's just published another book in this. I cannot remember what it was. I think it's something to do with bees. Let me just see how many books are in the series so we know. Outlander. Let me just have a look. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, and there's a couple of little bits. I'm just looking on Goodreads here. There's a couple in between too. So, yeah. Okay, so from what I can see, there is 8, but that is not actually covering the last book that's just been read. Let me go to the author and see if we've got all of her books up there, and then that way we might be able to get an actual... No. Just went to the author's thing. She's got 157 books. Wow. Well, there you go. I did not know that. So it looks like there's 8. So the book that's just come out must be book 9. It's not listed on there. So either no one's read it or no one's rated it yet. I'll find out how many there are by the time I've read the next one. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to get into it. I have been looking forward to it. Very much so. So I've already got book 4 keyed up in Audible because I don't actually have the physical book. But I might get the physical book because I don't actually like listening to books when I go to bed. I'd rather just get off all digital stuff and just get straight onto like reading a book or something along those lines. All right. So that was that one. And I just read that just because there was no prompt or anything. It wasn't for magical stitches or anything like that. The next one is actually a bingo prompt. And this was last week's book. Last week's book. It was to read a book about your state that you live in or were born in, or that is set in either one. Okay, so I ended up going for a book that was set in Queensland because I live in Queensland, in far north Queensland. This was published back in 2020 and it's got 284 pages. It is just a woman's literature book, like a little bit of a mystery in it, and I actually read this on Kindle and also listened to the audio. Basically, it's about a group of Irish Catholic nuns that come to far north Queensland, to a town called Jumbaroo, and Claire is the main character in the book, and she is pretty much in charge of everything. So she's in charge of getting this Catholic school set up in the town for the townspeople, so they don't have to send their children off to boarding school because all the children are sent off. And the mayor has organised this, and I didn't write down his name. I didn't really like him as a character. He was a bit of a doofbag, like not a great character at all. Like he was great for the story, but I didn't like him as such. But I forgot to write his name down, so I do apologise for that. But anyway, he's pretty much running the show up there. He's got his hand in everything. He comes across as he's doing all this great stuff. This book has some sensitive issues in it. It actually has a lot to do with how the Aboriginal people were treated back in 1936. This was set. So it's covering a lot of the stuff of the Aboriginals removed from their land, mistreated, stolen generation, all of that sort of stuff. So be warned that it does have some triggers in it. And like it will, in some incidences, it will actually upset you. So please just be aware of that. So basically, Claire is a meddlesome nun. And she has her finger, like her nose in everything and what's going on. And when she finds out about how they're being treated, that just escalates everything. And she pretty much takes on the town mayor. She does. He is just the worst person there is. But she's dealing with the bias of the town and the racism. And it's not just racism on Aboriginal people. It's also racism from the nuns themselves against the Chinese immigrants. The gold is a big feature up there. So basically they're logging and all that sort of stuff. And so there is some, abuse towards children from the nuns and all that sort of stuff as well. And Claire doesn't like that sort of stuff. And so she's very young, and this older nun is just being a pain in her backside, and she's being racist against, discriminating and not marking the Chinese immigrants or the Italian immigrants or anything like that. She's basically, and she doesn't, she's just against everybody, basically. So that's one thing that she's dealing with. She's also dealing with the mayor who's got his finger in everything, and he's sort of removing, he's up to no good and basically about to oust, he's already ousted a lot of the people from their land and all the rest of it, but he's made a deal down in Brisbane to take their mission from them as well. And so the mission is run by the 7-Day Adventists, which are referred to as a cult in this particular book. And basically the 7-Day Adventists are trying to do the right thing by the Aboriginal people and all the rest of it, but the church down in Brisbane has pretty much sold the land out from underneath them, and now they all have to move. It ends up having a really a somewhat of a good ending on that front, but still not great. But it was a great book. It was a quick read. I really enjoyed reading it. And if you do end up reading it, stick to when the story ends. Stick with the audiobook if you're listening to it, or if you're reading it. The author's note about how she came to write this story is an amazing story in itself. So have a read of it if you enjoy that sort of thing. It is it's a fiction book, but it's a story. It was a quick read. It filled the prompt, and I basically just done a Google search for books that were set in Queensland, and it came up in Kindle, so that's why I grabbed it. And some of the things I had to deal with, they're in full habits. So think 1936. Okay, these nuns are Irish nuns. They've come from a colder part of the world, and they've come to far north Queensland, and they're fully dressed in their habits. Okay, could you imagine how hot they would have been? Oh my God, how they didn't die from heat exhaustion in this story, I don't know. But as I said, she's dealing with everything, and she tries to keep everything going smoothly and keep everybody happy and all the rest of it. And, some traumatic things happen throughout the story and all the rest of it, but it ends up having a nice rounded ending. I gave it a 3 stars. but it has sensitive issues, so just be aware of that. A few books that I've got coming up to read. I've got some... I'm reading this week. Hopefully I'm reading this week. I'm currently reading The White Queen by Philippa Gregory. I'm also reading The Easy Day Was Yesterday, The Extreme Life of an SAS Soldier by Paul Jordan. I've got keyed up Drums of Autumn, which is book 4 in the Outlander series, and I'm also reading the last book, Book of Life, by Deborah Harkness in the Discovery of Witches series. So yeah, that is basically all of the things that I've got keyed up for this week. Hopefully I'll get them all read. Probably not the Outlander book, but at least the other ones I will. They're pretty much all on audio. So yeah, that's about it from me today. Hope you enjoy this book. If you did, give us a thumbs up down below. Don't forget to subscribe. And as always, take care, and I'll see you all again next time. Bye for now.